Situation in Ukraine is truly heartbreaking, but overall Russia is losing, both politically and economically. Putin has made two enormous strategic errors. First, he thought he could exploit divisions in the West, and also NATO. Instead, he facing united and strong NATO and EU more than any time in decades. Second, he deeply misunderstood the Ukrainian national identity and will to fight particularly since its initial invasion of Crimea and eastern Ukraine in 2014. Instead of being greeted as liberators or collapsing the government, the entire nation is now against it. For the Ukrainian people, as dark as the time is, their long term victory seems inevitable. The entire nation has rallied around their leader, President Zelensky, and the people will not accept Russian rule of any kind. Kremlin, on the other hand, has been able to tightly control the information available to Russians. Until now, ordinary people have been silent, but it is much harder to keep a reality at bay in this 21st century. And with a collapsed currency, growing international isolation, and now as the Kremlin has admitted hundreds of Russian casualties, actually numbers are much more bigger than that, and it will be difficult for the government to keep telling its story. Although has not widespread panic, people have been racing to convert their increasingly worthless rubles into hard currency and to buy durable goods. And there have been surprising pockets of resistance in Moscow and St. Petersburg and other cities. The question now facing the Russian government is how will the Russian population at large perceive the war if it is long and bloody and the army need even more resources? Let's talk about economic loss of Russia, which is the most important part. The sanctions imposed by West will lead to the collapse of the entire financial system of Russia and the slowing down of economic activity in the country. The country's two largest economic regions are to be hit hardest. Moscow, which accounts for 38% of Russian exports, and St. Petersburg, 6%. On the other hand, Russia has a poorly diversified export structure, adding that the EU embargo would reduce its exports by 135 billion euros. According to data, the EU is the largest recipient of Russian goods. In 2020, 33% of Russian exports were sent to the 27 members of state of the Europe, more than twice as much as to China. In 2021, more than 75% of Russian exports were made up of just five products, such as oil and gas and refined petroleum products, metals, chemical products. Sanctions related to oil and gas exports would bring the greatest loss to Russian budget. In 2021, profits from the exports of these raw materials contributed 36% of the revenues to the Russian budget. And in previous years, this share was often larger. According to analyzers, the sanctions should also hit other profitable export goods such as precious and semi-precious metals, steel, iron and fertilizers. Russian economy will suffer from such sanctions much more than Europe in any scenario. Then GDP will shrink. A country's market rate GDP is its GDP converted to a global currency like the US dollar, while there are other ways to measure GDP. When it comes to global trade and investment and economic power, the market rate is what matters. Russia's market rate GDP is 2021 was 1.6 trillion, enough to make its world 11th largest economy behind South Korea. If we crudely convert Russia's 2021 estimated GDP by March 7, 2022 currency rates rather than the average exchange rate used last year, then place it against 2021 market rate GDP table, the ranking change and Russia slide to 22nd place, falling between Taiwan and Poland, not much larger than the state of Ohio. That's a far cry from the past when Russia was a true world power in 1957, when the USSR economy was the world's second largest economy after USA. This drop is likely an underestimate, while a failing ruble lower Russia's exchange rate of its GDP to US dollars, its weakening economic lowers its ruble GDP directly, and Russia's isolation will erase its economic competitiveness, widening the economic gap further in the medium term. These things are a little bit complicated to understand, of course. Well, this means Russian economy is dead. Even if this war is long lasting, taking different forms, maybe it will, maybe it's not. The most important issue has already been decided. These few days have proved to entire world that Ukraine is a very real nation and Ukrainians are willing to fight for their freedom, that they definitely do not want to live under a new Russian empire. The main question left open is how long it will take for this message to penetrate the Kremlin dictator and his evil empire.